FlatOut 4 Total Insanity didn't have to do much to be better than the irredeemably dire FlatOut 3. Still, new studio Kiloton has done a decent job here salvaging the comatose series, turning it back into a serviceable smash-em-up / stunt racer. Kiloton is stuck to the FlatOut style guide here, crafting a game that's very much in step with the likes of the first two. You know, the good ones. The presentation is inspired in almost every way by Bugbear's cult favourites, from the style of the menu screens to the colourful and busy stunt arena. It's definitely the stunt arena where FlatOut 4 sticks closest to the series' spirit. The stadium is filled with ridiculous driver-tossing minigames like curling, beer pong, billiards and more. I dig finish pins, which demands both skill and strategy to nail the correct score of exactly 25. I'm confused by the likes of long jump, however, which has a net at the end of the landing zone, and thus a maximum distance that can be regularly reached and never beaten. You can either tackle these stunts solo, seeking to rule the leaderboards, or hit them up in pass-the-controller couch multiplayer. The racetracks themselves are reasonably reminiscent of those found in the old games too. Debris-filled courses snaking through forests, factories, cluttered lumber yards, a dusty red desert, and frozen towns. The big problem with the tracks is that none of the limited number of them available for each environment really does enough to distinguish themselves from each other. It didn't take long at all until I was bored of seeing the same track, or at least certain shared portions of them, every few races. FlatOut 4's arcade handling model is a bit light but mostly adequate, though its AI is slightly less so. It's not so much that it's very aggressive, this is a destruction racer of course, rather it's inconsistent. On some occasions, after becoming embroiled in some bedlam on the start line, I'd often find myself struggling to catch the front runners despite putting in mistake-free laps. Other times, I'd get out ahead and gallop away, winning by 10 seconds or more. They're fairly easily outfoxed in things like capture the flag too. They can mount a reasonable resistance in FlatOut 4's deathmatch and destruction derby games, but I'm not a huge fan of the way they play out. They're a bit shallow, cars become virtual missiles boosting and crunching through doomed opponents like paper. I definitely prefer previous FlatOut custodian Bugbear's authentic and more tactical approach with its similarly destruction-centric racer Wreckfest, even if that game has been in Steam Early Access for going on 400 years now. My biggest disappointment with FlatOut 4 is how rapidly I grew exhausted with the career mode. Career mode is broken into 3 tiers, beginning with the Derby class, where grids consist of rusty rolling wrecks. It didn't take long until I was lapping the same tracks in the same car to the same music. There are twists on the racing, like a beat the bomb distance challenge and a chaotic but acceptable weapons-based race called Assault, but it all became a grind quicker than I figured it would. I was reluctant to buy a second Derby car because the payouts are so meagre. I concentrated on upgrading my initial car and saving the large sum required for a car in the next class instead, hoping for some fresh racing. Frustratingly, once I could purchase a car in the next class, I discovered the next batch of events is basically a rehash of the first tier, only in a faster car with no rust on it. Outside of career mode is FlatOut mode, a chain of individual stunt and racing events. It's basically a second career mode, but it does a better job of putting us in different cars more often. FlatOut 4 locks a lot of its vehicles, but doesn't effectively communicate the circumstances that will see them unlocked for purchasing career mode. FlatOut 4 Total Insanity is better than I feared, but not as good as I'd hoped. Kiloton has dredged this near-forgotten racing rebel from the very bottom of the barrel and fashioned it into a basic but fun stunt-filled speedster, but I found myself regularly frustrated with its repetitive career mode, its stingy economy and nebulous unlockables, its superficial demolition derby events, and its uneven difficulty. For all your racing requirements, stay with IGN.